Hey everyone, welcome back to Full Stack Development with Ember and Rails. I'm Josh Justice, aka Coding It Wrong, and I'm super excited this week. I'm so excited to get into what we're doing that I could not wait for the stream, and I worked super far ahead. So I've got stuff working awesome in the app. I've got it deployed. Don't have a registration form yet, so you can't sign in to my deployment of it, but you could pull it down off of the open source where it lives up on GitHub, but we're going to be building it out together today. So things may be a bit more prepared this week because I've kind of run through some rough edges myself and got things working in a good way, but that should just allow us to cruise through and build out some more functionality in our app. So last time as we were building, we got the view screens working and looking good in our app. Let's take a look at it. We've got the list of ideas here, ideas that have come to mind off of books and sources that we're reading. And then we have the list of sources over here, the sources that they're coming from. And then as you're looking at the ideas, the quotes for them show up as well. So this kind of note-taking approach that I'm trying to seeing what I think about. So that's working great, but to make it actually useful, we need to be able to edit data as well. So that's what can't hear me, thank you. Duval FPV says he can't hear me. The microphone says it's coming in, so you may want to check the audio on your end. I apologize if it's not coming through. I think I'll have the recording regardless. Should I wait a second here to make sure we're good? I apologize. I will. Okay, cool. Duval says sorry, it was me. Thank you for looking out for me, Duval. I really appreciate it. Any feedback on the stream? I'm new enough to this that I do not trust myself to be doing things right. Cool. So Duval, I'm glad you can hear me, and I'm glad you're on the chat. Give me any other feedback, questions, interaction you want. I love to interact with folks on the stream. So we've got the reading of our data working, and we want to get creating, updating, and deleting of data as well. So we're going to build out a bunch of components to make that work and interact with Ember data and see just how easy and straightforward things can be with Ember data. It's going to be really great. So to do this, I've actually set up a couple of shortcuts to make this smooth. As I was building out more and more of these features, I found that I needed some shortcuts. So if you're using Bash, like I am, which is the default on Mac OS, there's a Bash profile file where you can put aliases. Let me zoom into these. And I created aliases for generate commands. Ember generate component, EGC. Ember generate controller, a little bit more rare, but EGCN. Ember generate model, EGM. And Ember generate route, EGR. So that just ends up being useful and productive there. Another thing that I found was the import statements at the tops of the files. That was kind of tedious to type in every time. And so there's a feature in Atom called Atom Snippets. I haven't used them before, but I found that I needed them now. So if you just go into Atom Snippets, you'll see this file here, and you can create snippets. So for example, I made these Ember Octane snippets here. If I just type in EO action, it's going to do an Ember Octane import action, and it's going to put in the correct import statement. If you're using Visual Studio Code, it may import these for you automatically, add these import statements. Visual Studio Code is great, but also I found that sometimes it gave me the incorrect imports, and sometimes the imports did not work. So I'm more of the mindset that I'd like to explicitly put in the import, but snippets allow that to work well, and just about any text editor or IDE is going to provide a snippet facility. So you may want to give that a try in your own work, whatever framework you're using, to kind of facilitate these imports. So with these imports and with these commands, we're good to go. So the first thing I want to do on the ideas screen here is to be able to create a new idea. And this is going to be one of the simplest screens that we can do, is just going to be able to, let me get it up on my cheater monitor here, because like I said, I looked into this myself beforehand. So we're going to create a new idea form component. So let's do Ember generate component, new idea form. We'll get that generated. Hopefully, as usual, my virus scanner won't be too bad. Won't be too slow. On your computer, and on most computers, it'll be great. On mine, the virus scanner is slowing it up just a little bit. Let's go ahead and open up the folders where this is going to be. Here we go, new idea form. So we have templates for a bunch of components, but only functionality for just a few. New idea form is here. So what do we want on this form? What do we want it to look like? Am I going to copy this over, or am I going to type it out? Let's type out the first one, and maybe I'll copy it over for some of the future ones as well. So as you may recall, we're using a UI library called Ember Paper, and we're using material design, and so we have Paper CRUD for CRUD UIs. We use this contextual components to get the CRUD passed to us to give us kind of like nested components we can use. So in this component, I just want a card to show up at the top of the list for a new idea, almost like it's another card that we're going to be typing into. So in there, I'm going to go ahead and make a form, because that way if I hit return or press the button, either way it'll be submitted. And then on submit of that form, I want to do create idea. That can be the name of the action within this component that's going to create the idea. And we're going to get a form contextual component. After typing all this, I realized I think I want some snippets for Ember Paper as well, just because I'm using these same UI components so much through the app. So maybe I'll do that sometime soon, maybe by next time. So we'll just go in the card content field, because we don't want the big title, we just want the kind of main content area. And then I looked into, I certainly would not have been able to do this off the cuff, but I looked into some layout stuff. Let me paste it in and we'll take a look at what it means. You'll remember me struggling on a previous stream with getting the layout stuff in place. And even now, like, it's still, like, it makes sense when I think about it, but I still kind of struggle with getting it right. I think maybe because it's not quite the same as in Bootstrap, which I've used more frequently. So what we're saying here is we want things in 2 columns. I'll put the contents of them in there so then we can see what's going on. So we want to have an input element here for a text input. So for the idea, we need a prompt for just the summary of the idea. I think that's the name of the field. Let's double check. Yes, summary is the name of the idea. All right, so we want this to be a text area. So text area true. Block, which I think has something, as I was experimenting, has something to do with the way it displays. Maybe I think it might fill the whole area of what's inside, like a display block in HTML. We want a label that appears inside of the element as this typical material design style. And the label's going to be new idea. Although we're filling in the summary field, it kind of represents the whole idea. So I found that the label new idea is helpful. So then what's the value? We're going to have a property on the component called summary that we're going to store it in, and so we'll define that over in the form, but that's where it'll store it. And then, again, this is another interesting thing about Ember Paper, whereas with Ember's built-in input helpers, you can just specify the value and it'll do 2-directional. It'll write to it as well as read from it. You need to explicitly provide an on-change in Ember Paper. And to do this, we can actually use some built-in stuff. So we can say action to make a new action kind of inline. And we can use the mut or mute helper for mutate a value. So if we say mutate this summary, this creates a new action that's going to mutate the field summary. And the argument that onChange passes to it, passing in the text, that's going to be assigned to this .summary. So we'll see that this is an easy way to do it. And it'll just set the field. The last thing is we have pass-through, which is a property that passes through arguments to the HTML one. So this is going to add these attributes to the form element. We use hash here to pass key value pairs, and we're going to say auto capitalize equals sentences. Of course, writing this out from scratch, I wouldn't think about this off the top of my head, but when I was trying this out on my phone, generally these ideas are sentences, and so I want the capitalization on a mobile phone at the start of a sentence, but not on every word. Cool, so that's our form input, and then here in the other column we have a button. So we have the form submit button. So what does it have? Raised equals true. The raised look and feel for material design is what I want. Primary, because I want it to be the primary color of the theme. And again, this stuff is not Ember specific. This is the material design library we're using. So we're going to have a save button here that appears. So now let's look at these 2 different columns. We have column layout here. And what this is saying here is that it should be laid out in a single row when we're greater than the small size. So what that means is, or greater than extra small. So at extra small, so like, on a mobile phone, it's not going to be layout. Oh, check it out, here we go. No, by default, the layout is a column, which means things one above the other. But then if we're greater than extra small, we go with row instead. And so that means that the text input and the button are going to be on top of one another on mobile, but next to each other on larger sizes. And then here we see at greater than extra small, 80% goes towards the text input and 20% goes towards the button. So that's there. I think it's not ready to show yet because we need to add the behavior and then put it into a form. So let's just add that behavior yet for this form component. We generated the component, so the starting class is there. Let's do some imports. Let's do our action import, service import, and tracked import. I don't think we've seen tracked before, so I'm really excited to show this. Tracked is one of the coolest things about the Ember Octane preview to make Ember feel really nice and modern, even simpler than other frameworks you might have tried when it comes to tracking changes to values and properties. So let's talk through what's happening here. So service store. So components don't have access to the Ember data store by default, but we can use the service decorator to get access to it, and that makes it explicit that this component is going to be accessing the Ember data store. Next, we're going to have the field summary, started as an empty string. This is the field that we read from and write to in the form input. And so we're setting that value to empty string. I'm going to come back to the tracked decorator in just a second. So let's come to this. We want an action here. And the action is, I think it's going to be an async action, create idea. Again, if you didn't catch this on a previous stream, Ember supports async and await out of the box to use this nice modern asynchronous syntax for JavaScript, which is really nice. So here we're going to create a new idea record. We're going to do this.store.createRecord. The type is idea. And then the values we pass to it as the summary is just this.summary. We take the summary off of the component that we're on and we assign it in this list of attributes to set on this new record. So we have an idea now. We're going to do await idea.save. So that's going to save the idea to the Ember data store and therefore to the server. And then after that, we're going to clear out the summary. So we want to reset the summary value because once you've typed in an idea once and it saves successfully, we don't want to have to type it again. Well, we won't worry about error handling yet. I want to see just the general functioning of the website with this creating, updating, and deleting of data before we get into those edge cases. You may call me irresponsible, but it's a side project, so here we go. So this is the functionality we should need, with one brief exception we'll come back to in just a second. And now let's put this on the form, the route on the template it belongs to. So we have our index page here that's showing all the idea cards, and so we're just going to add new idea form at the top. And I just love the fact in Ember, seems like this might be changing in an updating version, but right now I love the fact in Ember that I can just reference a component and I don't need to import it or anything like that. All right, so we're on the page here. Here's the new idea showing up here. Let's just say this is a new idea, and let's see if it saves. If I hit enter, it's a text area because I want the ability to have a multi-line thing here. I might change my mind on that, but for now I want that. So we're going to click save. All right, so this is a new idea, shows up down there, but it doesn't clear out at the top. So why is that? The reason why that is because in Ember, we need to indicate, using the tracked decorator, properties that might need to change. In the past, this was handled using a get and a set method on Ember objects and on components. But with more recent versions of Ember, we can read just using this.summary, the native JavaScript property syntax. And with the Ember Octane preview, we can write just by assigning to the property. But there's one thing, we have to annotate it with tracked. And this lets Ember know that this property can change and will affect what's outputted into the template. So that'll let Ember know just to track it so that we can see the changes. So with that the case, let's try that again. The page, that's cleared out just because the page was reloaded. So let's do another idea. We click save, and now that new idea is added and it's cleared out from here. So it's actually removed from the text field and we're ready to add a new idea in there. So that's great. Let's reload the page to make sure it did in fact make it to the server, so it comes back in when we load it. So now we're good. We've got our new idea form. All right, cool. So let's go to the new quote form next. Here, when we're on an idea or in a source, we want to be able to add a new quote form, to add a new quote to either of these pages. So let's do that. And we're going to come back to new sources and new authors a bit later. I'm going to just look up on my cheater monitor what's going on here. New quote form and a new quote form. Cool. All right. Okay, so let's do Ember generate component, new quote form, and get that going. So let's see here. What's different about a quote? So a quote has text in the quote itself, but then we also have a reference to the source it's under and a reference to the idea that it's under. So now, it comes to the idea, I was playing around with the interaction here. This is one piece about the interaction of the app that I was still playing with. It wasn't clear to me, like, I want to add a new idea and I want to add a new source. Like, what order do I do it in? So I did it in one order at first, but as I was playing around with it on my phone and reading books and entering quotes and ideas, I found that it seemed most natural to me to add a quote first. The quote is the concrete thing that I'm interested in that comes out of the source. So let me get the quote into the system, and then from within the quote, I want to be able to add an idea under it, or connect it to an existing idea. So because of that, I needed to make a change to the back end. So previously, as is default in Ember API, in Rails APIs, when you have a relationship like quote belongs to idea, it's a required relationship by default. But I needed to come in and make the idea relationship optional on the quote. That allowed me to create new quotes without an idea set and to come back later and add the idea in. So that was very nice that it was just a single line change in Rails and we were good to go. So that being the case, what we want to do now, I think let's go onto the source page first. We have these quotes under this source, and so we want to add form with additional quotes that we're adding in, connected to this source and not setting an idea just yet. All right, so let's check it out. We have our new quote form, and I'm gonna start expediting things by just copying and pasting over. All these forms are very much the same. So let's review it and go through it. We have a paper card again. When we submit the form, we're calling create quote, so that's the action that we'll make. We have an input again that's very similar, still auto-capitalizing sentences. The field is text that we're setting, and then a save button. So that's all almost identical to the form we already had. Now over here in the new quote form action. So this I'll actually type in. So let's import the action, service, and import tracked. So those are good. Service store. We've got our tracked property now. It's going to be called text because it's the text of the quote. And now we have our action. Async create quote. All right, here. I have some error handling there actually, but let's not put it in here yet until something else happens. So let's say here, const quote equals this store create record quote. So to create a new quote, what do I need? I need to set the text. We'll set it to this.text. But the other thing I need is I need a source. I need the source that this quote belongs to. So where can I get that? Well, I'm going to want to pass that in as an argument because I'm going to be on the source page. We'll pass in the source as an argument. So that's just going to be under this.args.source. That'll be available to us there. And then we're going to do await quote.save. And then we're going to clear out text to empty string. And because we have text as tracked, this.text. Because we have text as tracked, that should update in the template. Now let's put this in where we need it. So under the source detail, we have all of our quotes here. And so we'll just do new quote form. And we want to pass in the source. This.model is the name of the source because it's the main model for that route that we're on. So let's see if it's working. We've got our new quote form here. The new quote, for some reason, I put on 2 different lines. I think the reason why is because it was more likely for a quote to be a multi-line thing here. This is a new quote, and it's good. We'll save it, and it shows up under there. Let's reload the page. That makes sure it shows up, and let's make sure it's not under the other source. Yeah, it's not under the other source. And you'll see that we have it set up where if there's not an idea connecting to this quote just yet, it's not going to show up under there. It just shows up as empty. And later on, once we get the basic CRUD in place, we're going to add in the ability to connect those forms. It's interesting that back when I was first transitioning into the front end from the back end, I was wanting to have a new page for everything, like the list of a record, the show of a single record, the new route or the edit route for a record. But as I'm getting more comfortable in the front end, I'm realizing that we don't always want to change which routes we're on. Sometimes just adding a new entry in a list, we can just do it from a component right on that page, and it's really nice. So I feel more comfortable in the front end now. All right, so our new quote form is there. So now let's get into deleting. Let's delete some records. We'll delete the quote and we'll delete the idea. Let's delete the quote first, and I'll show you why that is. The way to do that, if I'm remembering correctly, is, what did I say? I was going to delete the quote first? Yeah. Quote list. That doesn't look right. Quote card. That's right. It's on the card component that I decided to do this. Let me pull up these notes. Delete. Great. So for now, until we think of something else, what I want to do is get these quotes here and get just a delete button that shows up in the actions area for the card to get the ability to delete out a quote. That'll allow us to add this dummy data and delete it out and not feel too overwhelmed by it. It looks like we don't actually have a quote card component yet. We just have it inline here. So let's create that. Ember generate component quote card. We'll create that, and it'll fill in there. Cool. All right, come on, quote card. There we go. All right, we quote card. So we can just take this paper card over here and fill it in. One of the really nice things about Ember templates is just being able to copy and paste template code in there. And you'll need to change some of the contents of it. Like here, quote is now going to be an argument passed in. But other than that, all the components stays the same. You don't have to copy over imports. You don't have to put it in a function or a class context. It's just set to go. So that's really nice. So here we're going to be able to do just a quote card, quote equals quote. And this is kind of a refactoring. So let's just make sure this shows up correctly before we do anything else. Our quote's still showing up. Quotes are still showing up. Perfect. We're good to go. So now we can add more functionality to the quote card, including an action that we're going to need. So we're on the quote card here. Text headline, text subheadline. Quote card, title. Interesting. This is not looking familiar, but let's just focus on the part that makes the most sense. So we have our card title area, and now we'll have card actions. This is an area at the bottom of a card for actions, for buttons. And so in here, we're going to say, yeah, now we just want a paper button. It's going to be a worn button, which is Ember paper styling, or material design styling. It says it's going to be red to kind of warn that it's a potentially destructive action. And on click, we're going to do delete. Delete is the name we'll call the action. Say delete. So what are we going to do for this action itself? Well, let's see, looking at the cheater monitor. All right, so we're going to have action. The action is delete. Notice, by the way, that with Ember Octane, and I think maybe earlier versions of Ember, we don't have to do bind or put in an arrow function or anything like that. We can just refer to this dot delete, and Ember knows, through some combination of action decorators or something, it knows to bind it to the component we're on. So we don't have to do that manually, which is nice. Let's confirm to make sure we actually want to delete this. So we'll do just a built-in good old 1996 or whatever JavaScript confirm, and we could do something fancier in the future, but this is fine for now. Are you sure you want to delete this quote? So confirm is going to synchronously return a true or false, depending on if we confirm it. And if it's false, we just return. And then if it's true, we go on. We say this.args.quote. So this is the quote record that's been passed into us. And with Ember data, we can just say destroy record. And that's going to delete the record. And that's really all we need. It's nice and straightforward. So let's check out how this looks. We're on the page. We have the delete here. We can cancel out and deletes don't happen. Or we can click OK. Oh, and it errored out. So let's see what happened there. Options is undefined. Ooh, that's worrying to me because I think that was an Ember data error that I was getting and I thought I got it updated. Might need to update to the very latest version of Ember data while we're on here to make sure this gets cleared out. So that's fine. That's a thing we can do. So let's do it. I'm going to look over. I'll show you the way that I would actually go about it. So when we're on the Ember data, the Ember Octane preview, we're on pre-release versions of the Ember packages. Let me quit out of the Ember server here. Hopefully this doesn't make something worse as I make these changes. So let me just kind of post these. Move those integration tests. Work in progress CUD. So if you look in your package.json file, you'll see that for Ember CLI, there's a specific commit hash, and same for Ember data and Ember source. So let's just update. These are changing all the time. This is coming directly off of master. So let's just update these to the latest versions that we can get. So the way I'm going to do that is just by looking up the projects in here, going to npm, Ember source, searching Ember source on npm. I'm going to go over to GitHub and see the latest commit. Well, the very latest, we're going to copy it. There. I could probably just do Ember data by itself, but let's go ahead and update them all. And we'll see how much we regret it. Okay, commits are here. Copy the latest commit, Ember data, and Ember CLI. Might as well do all three of them. I would, if I was really having trouble, I might not do all three of them at once, but for right now I am. There might be an easier way to do this if you're more of a node whiz than I am. You might know, but that's what I know. Okay, so all three of these hashes are updated. So let's do yarn install. And in the meantime, let's think about what we want to do. So for our quote card, a quote is a standalone record, so it can always be deleted and there's no problem there. However, I guess I can't click between screens right now because the server's down. However, an idea we can't necessarily delete because an idea might be referenced from a quote, and the database won't necessarily let us delete an idea if a quote is referencing it. So we might need to handle it in a different way. Let's open up Ember Server again and see if this is working better. So I think what we're going to need to do here is add a little bit of error handling. When we delete an idea, we're going to check and see if the delete operation fails or if it succeeds. We're going to do at least a little bit to warn the user what's going on. It doesn't need to be perfect or finalized now because we're still in the experimentation phase. Like, I'm still at the point where I'm trying to figure out if this is really going to be that useful of an app. I'm feeling better and better about it, but I'm still experimenting. So I want to move rapidly and get rapid progress as to how, rapid feedback as to how things are going. So this is really causing my virus scan to go crazy. So hopefully it'll come up soon. So we have, it's right on the quote card, and it's very nice that we're able to just call destroy record right from the quote card here. It's a record it's a component that knows about the quote, and we don't have to go through a lot of machinations to get a delete happening. It's all provided for us by Ember data. Our server's back up, so let's take a look here. Here's the quotes. Let's try to delete it. Hope things are good. Yeah, we're good. So this is something that I learned. I spent about a day or not a whole day, but like off and on in my free time, about a day or so, trying to troubleshoot this error, getting worried about being on the Ember Octane preview, switching back to stable, or trying out my stable branch that I still had. And eventually I found that when you're on the Ember Octane preview, when you're on like the canary channel, the master branch, the bleeding edge, oftentimes the best idea when something's going wrong, especially with basic stuff like this, just simple functionality of Ember, oftentimes the best idea is just to update to the latest commits of everything and see if it fixes it. So it fixed things in this case. We reload the screen here. We can see that that quote is now gone. So that's good. I'm going to do a commit for this. Update to latest Ember canary hashes. Cool. So we are deleting a quote, and now let's do let's delete an idea. So we didn't have a quote card before, but then we added it in. So we don't have an idea card component JavaScript class, but we do have an idea card template. This is because this was a template-only component where we didn't need any functionality up until this point, but now we do need functionality. And it turns out what we can do is just generate an idea card component again. It's going to find out that we already have a template, and it's going to ask if we want to overwrite it or not. And we can just say no. That way we're still going to get the generated component JavaScript file. We're actually going to get tests, but we're not using those just yet. And that's going to allow us to move forward. It says installing component, and now it asks, do you want to overwrite the existing idea card? If you did it accidentally, as long as it's in version control, you could restore. We can just hit no to skip, but we do get our new idea card component. So that's great. So let's just kind of implement just about the same thing. Under quote card, we added these actions with the delete. And under the idea card, let's do the same. We have a details button already, so we don't need another action section. We can just add another button. So details is in the very bottom right, which feels nice to me. I'm gonna add the delete button to the left of it. And because it has a warn set on it to make it red, it's going to kind of stand out at us. And we are going to have the confirmation to make sure we don't accidentally click on it. So let's kind of compare with a quote card here. Get the action decorator. In fact, let's just copy this part over. Are you sure you want to delete this idea? And if they say no, we're going to go back. And then otherwise, we're going to do destroy record. But now we want some error handling. So let's see what I did for error handling. Because, in fact, let's show you. I'll show you the error. Nope, it's not a private method, it's a decorator. Let's see the error, and then we'll see how we can handle it. Because I didn't think to handle it in advance, I just ran across the error, and then we figured out what to do from there. So this is a new idea, another idea. First, I'll show you one that's succeeding. So I can say, another idea, no, I don't want to delete it. Another idea, yes, I do want to delete it. It disappears, and when we reload the page, we're fine. But let's go into sources. Let's add a new quote, like quote with idea. Actually, can I add that? Oh, I don't yet have set the ability to do that. So what we can do here is here's a quote, and then here's the idea associated with it. The reason software design is necessary is because change is inevitable. So this is a quote. This is an idea that has quotes associated with it. So let's try to delete it. We say yes. And do we get, yeah, here's an error. Ember data request delete return to 500. So that's from the server. Let's see what the server said. Let's ask again. Network, oh yeah, I want XHR. So response. PG foreign key violation error. So this is an error that's being returned from Postgres from our database. And it says delete on table ideas violates foreign key constraint on table quotes. It's not the easiest thing in the world to parse. Oh, we got a whole backtrace and everything. Nice. It's not the easiest thing in the world to parse, but clearly the idea's connection to quotes is what's causing the problem here. So I found when I did this that something went wrong. Like when I click on details here, I get another error in Ember that says, attempted to handle event loading data on idea while in the state root deleted uncommitted. What this is saying is that Ember data is tracking the fact that this thing is deleted, but it's not committed, like it hasn't been persisted to the server, so it's still this weird intermediate state. So that's unfortunate. I at least want to warn the user that it happened rather than just leaving them on the same page. So let's do this. Let's say, since we're using, in my code I wasn't using async await, but let's use async await. If we're using async await, we can use a try and catch block. So we'll try to destroy record, catch exception, and then here we'll say console error E, and then we'll say alert error. Well, let me copy and paste this text because I can't type that fast. An error occurred while trying to delete this idea. Make sure there are no quotes associated with it and try again. So we're at least telling the user what's going on. Method delete has no await. Await. Cool, so let's see if this works for us. All right, we've got our idea that can't be deleted yet. Try to delete it, and then we get this error message. We get the alert telling us that it happened. And we're still going to have that problem if we try to interact with it, where we're going to get an Ember data error. But at least I have, that's something we would want to clean up before going to production and stuff like that. But at least I have a bit of a warning now. So that's good enough for me for now. So now we are deleting ideas and we are deleting quotes. So cool. So our two main interactions are set. I think, let's see here. Do I want to add a new quote under here? Not yet. I think we're okay. So our two main things, our ideas and our sources, are set. We can't yet tie ideas to sources, and that's a bit more complex. So to kind of keep going down this path, let's add screens for our additional models, for our authors and for our sources, to be able to flesh those out, add, edit, and delete them. That'll give us flexibility for our test data, if nothing else. So let's make an authors list page. I think that'll be good to do next. We'll do Ember generate route authors. This will create an authors route for us. And we do have an author's model already. That author is good to go. So we're going to have an author's route here. So in here, we have our route. This is here, author's route. We want a model hook to do the loading. And so here we're just going to say return this.store. And remember, we had to inject the store service into a component. But in a route, the store service is available automatically because it's common to load your data for the route up here. So we're going to do find all author. And I don't think we need anything else because we're only going to be displaying authors on this page. We don't need to proactively pull down related records. So that'll be fine. On here, we're going to do each this.model as author. Let's go over to the cheater monitor to see how I want to set that up to make it look nice and beautiful Ooh. We'll do that refactoring in just a little bit. We'll do it this way first, and then we'll do something a bit different. Okay, author list. All right. And let's go ahead and make an author card. Ember generate component author card at author. All right, so we've got our author card component, and let's see what we want to put in there. Author card is here. So let's paste in this content. We've got a paper card as usual. We have a title area that shows the author's name, and then in the actions we have a details and a delete. Let's leave the actions off for now. We'll put those in a moment once we've got everything displaying just fine. So this should display the list of the authors. And I'm going to leave the author card JavaScript file for the component for the moment because I think we might need it soon. Clearly with that delete. All right, and let's add navigation to the top of the app as well. So that's in the app header. So we have ideas and sources, and we're going to add nav button to authors. We're using that component we made, nav button, to make it easy to get around. So we save. We go to here to authors. Takes us to the authors page, and the authors show up there. So that's really great. Let's go ahead and add the add author form onto here, and we'll just finish this whole form before we move on to others. So Ember generate component, new author form. We'll get a component in here, and let me pull it up on the cheater monitor. Yeah, it's coming in. This is also, because this is kind of a standalone record, this will be easy to put in. New author form, so let's copy it over. This is all very much the same form that we had before, and if we found that this was happening more and more, we could kind of abstract this out to a component that's reused, but it makes sense that since we're using this Ember paper library, that we see some repetition there. Our form action is going to be create author. We've got the left and right layout, the new author field, and the name property. This time we're doing auto-capitalized words because folks, at least in Western countries, tend to capitalize the letters of their names. And we have a submit button. So that's nice and straightforward. Let's go ahead on the author route, put in the new author form. There's nothing to pass into it. And we'll go into here. Let's make sure there's no edge cases I'm not thinking of. This is all very much the same. So let's actually kind of copy and paste things here from the new quote form. Nope. Copy over action, inject, and tract. And then in the component, we got the service. We got the name, I think is the name of the field. Name, yeah. Name, create author, create record author, and then we just have name is this.name. It's going to be author.save and then set name to the empty string. So let's see if that works. New author, Avdi Grimm, great guy in the Ruby community. His name shows up, we reload, and it's still there, so we're good. So now that we're adding folks, I don't want to delete Avdi, he's great. Like a silly person, let's add a silly person. And now we want to delete the silly person. So let's add that delete functionality. So we're going to need that on the author card. Let's go in the opposite direction this time. Kind of riffing off of the quote card. We've got the idea card here. No, we want the author card. Copy over the action import. Copy over the action itself, the delete action. Are you sure you want to delete this author? And actually, I'm going to copy over the idea card because we are going to want error handling here because an author can have associated data. So it could be very easily for an error to happen. Are you sure you want to delete this author? And then args author destroy record. An error occurred while trying to delete this author. Make sure there are no sources associated with it because that's the data record that's connected to an author. And then we're good. So that's the delete, and now we actually need the delete button that shows up on the component. Let's close all the tabs. The author card. Let's go over to the idea card. copy over the delete button. And it could be easy just to copy everything over, but then more and more things could be erroring out. So adding things one little bit at a time is a nice way to be able to have a bit more confidence as things move. So we have silly person, we can cancel deleting that author, or we can actually delete that author and reload the page, and then we're done. This is, I mean, we're getting a little bit of speed here from me copying and pasting these forms, but like, this is like super productivity. Like, I'm not having to create actions and reducers. I'm not having to wire things up like that, create new endpoints in GraphQL. I'm just able to perform these CRUD operations to handle these records. And if you're working on an information system where you're creating, updating, and deleting records, Ember Data is a really, really great fit. I'm a huge fan. All right, so we're creating and we're deleting authors. Now we want an author detail page. So here we're going to actually have to make a bit of a change because I want to go into authors/foo or whatever author name and to get into there. But to do that, we're going to need to nest things. Actually, I'll show you like the way I actually made this mistake as I was building this out. So we'll see it in action. So let's do Ember generate route author. I call it author show. Let's see here. The more I stick with what I wrote before, the less I'm going to regret it. Router. Author detail, yeah. List and detail, that's a common thing. So we want an author detail route. Actually, I want authors detail because authors is the name of the URL. Generate route authors detail. So we can see in the router here that we have authors and we have the authors detail. Oh, it looks like, am I going insane? What is this author route? I think that did not sufficiently get deleted out. So let's just delete that ourselves. So we have the authors detail, and we'll just put the ID on the path for the detail so that that'll be available there. And so now let's set up this form. Well, actually, let's go into the route first. So here for the detail route, we're going to want to pull in some data. We want to pull in the author and the related sources, probably. Yeah. So we'll extract the ID from the model here, and then we'll return this.store find record. We want the author. We want the author by the ID, and now we want to pass in some options to it. Reload true. I forget why I need reload true, so let's leave it off for now, and we'll see what we run into. We'll probably run into to be able to put it back on. Include sources. So this will pull down the sources with the author to make sure we're good to go. And I think I just remembered what reload true is for. So let's check it out. Authors. Oh, we want to link to this as well. So let's go in the author card. Let's copy it from here. Nav button to author's detail with the author ID and ask for the details. So we're here, we want details. Authors 3 happens, but when we go to authors 3, we find that we're still seeing the same page. Why is that? Well, this is because the routes are nested and localhost 4200/authors shows the authors page. So when you want that not to be the case, but instead you want something else to show there, we need to change things a little bit. We need to generate a route for authors index. And so what this is going to let us do is instead of just having an authors route, we have the authors index and detail. So you're either on the index or you're on the detail. So we can move this over to the index, authors index route, and delete this route because we don't need it anymore. And now we can also, this author's template we can put here. So we now have those 2 different routes with these 2 different templates that show, oh, the detail, we don't have anything showing up yet. So let's say author detail, just to continue our train of thought. So now when we go to authors/3, we have author detail showing up. So that's really great. And now we go to authors, we still have the other authors showing up. So that's great. So let's put some content in here. So for the author detail screen, let's see how I formatted it. Authors detail screen. So let's do a, let's back button still a thing we have? Yeah. Back button to authors. Is to a thing we added in here? Yeah. Back button to authors. And then what do we want? Let's copy and paste this. So here's the author card that just shows the author's name. And then now we want to have the sources. Let's do it this way. Each this.model sources as source. Source card source equals source. So we're going to be able to see the source there. Obdigram. Obdi does not have sources yet, so let's go to somebody who does. He does in real life. Okay, so Sandy Metz says practical object-oriented design in Ruby. Cool. So that source is showing up. Does Martin Fowler have one? Yeah, has one. That's cool. You might not be able to see it, but there's a bit of flickering that's happening. So let me see if I can slow down good 3G. Let's try this. So I'm using good 3G slowdown here to simulate. Let me get my results here. Load the page. All right, now we simulate good 3G. We go to Sandy Metz. Wow, that's really fast. All right, well, that was not what I was expecting. All right, well, there is a little bit of flickering there as we come to the page where we already have Sandy, but then we load these records as well. That's okay for now, especially if we can't simulate it too well with the throttling. So I think that's good enough for now. So we can now get to an author detail page where we can see the sources. So now let's add the ability to add and remove sources. We'll create a new source form. Oh, one thing here though, notice our source card has Sandy Metz's name under it. So in the sources list, we want the author name, but when you're under the author, it doesn't really make sense to show the author name under there. So really we have the same kind of component. It's a source card that shows up in two different places, but we want something to vary in it depending on the situation. And what you can do in this is use some kind of, depending on the framework you're using, some kind of higher order component functionality. And in Ember, this is accomplished with yielding to a block. We're going to use a block form of the component to define what we want to show up in here. So let's check out how we can do this. If we're on the source index list here, we have the source card. And if we're on the author detail, we also have a source card. Then in the source card itself, we have the title here that has the headline and the subhead. Once again, let me just go to the cheater monitor to make sure I don't regret decisions that I make. Yeah, okay, cool. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to say the problem is we're always showing this subhead currently, but we don't always want to. So what we're going to do is move this over into here into block form. So when we're under the source list, we're going to say for our source card, now we want it to have a block. And inside the source card, we're going to provide this. So text subhead with, how is text subhead going to work there? Is that? Oh, interesting. Yes, okay, we're not going to have access to text subhead, but we do have access to source. I'm going to say source.author.name. So that's the content we want to be rendered as the subtitle, the optional content. And then here, for this source, we don't want anything rendered there, so we just will not have a block form. So in here, what we're going to say is for text subhead, we're going to say if has block. So this is an Ember helper that lets us know if we have a block. So only if it has a block given to it, we'll render the subhead. And here we're just going to yield it to the block to let the block render out what it needs to render out. So let's see how this looks. So now on Sandy Metz's page, when we output a source, we don't have anything showing up under there as far as the subtitle. But on the list of sources page, we do have the subtitle showing up. So we've got some variation in this functionality depending on which screen we're on. So that's pretty nice. All right, so now let's add in the ability to add and remove sources, and that might get us to the end of our time for today. So we're going to do Ember generate a component, new source form. And let's go ahead and wire it up where we want it to be. So under an author, we do have a new source form. I assume we're going to want to pass the author to it. because we're going to need that to assign the source to the right author. Now our source form is there. So let's just look over here. Copy that over. Oh yeah, I would have forgot about that extra field, so this is good that that's in here. So this time we're going to have two fields. We have one text field that says new source, where we put in the source, and it's actually going to be the title. Then we're going to have the URL. I found that I was linking to some blog posts, and I wanted to have the URL available to me for nothing else than to remind me that there is a URL there. So we're going to save, and now in the new source form, let's pull it up. New source form. All right, we're going to do our good old Ember action, EO service, and EO tract. Service store. We want tract title equals empty string. And then we have another tract field. We have URL equals empty string. So that's being set as well. Now we have an action. Create source. Let me make sure that's the right action we specified. Yep, create source. So in here, you may remember by now, const source equals this.store.create record. It's a source record. And then in here, what are we going to set? We're going to set the author equal to this.args.author, the passed in author. The title is this.title, and the URL is this.url. We're going to wait source save, and then we're going to clear out those two fields, this.title equals empty string, this.url equals empty string. So that should allow us to create a new source. Let's see if that's the case. So we have this source, and then we have this form up here, and then we're going to create, it's called 99 bottles of OOP. We're going to keep the URL empty. I'm going to save it, it shows up, and we reload, and it's still there. Now let's look into deleting this source. Do we not create a source card? No, we do have a source card. Is the component file not there? Maybe the component file is not there. Or maybe we need to generate it. So regardless, we'll figure this out. Let's add the delete button onto the source card. I'm going to call this delete Ember generate component source card. Every once in a while on Atom, I have an issue where the file doesn't show up in the side navigator. So let's see. Oh no, it was actually not there. So source card was not there because I had deleted it in the past, and now it's there. All right. So let's get this source card going. We're going to want action because there's an action. The action is delete. And in here, I'm just going to copy this content over because it's pretty boilerplate compared to what we've done before. We're going to confirm that you really want to delete this source. And if there's an error, this is using try catch syntax rather than async await. That's okay. An error occurred while trying to delete this source. Make sure there are no quotes associated with it and try again. So we'll save that. And then on the source, yeah, we added that delete button already. So we have the sources here. I like 99 bottles of OOP, so I want to keep that. So let's just add a nonsense source. Reload to make sure it stays there. Delete this source. It goes away. Reload again, and we're good to go. So this is a lot of things. So let's see what we have. Let's check out our site as a whole. So the ideas list here, we can create a new idea and delete existing ideas. The sources list just shows us all our sources. Right now we can't create a source under there because the way we do that instead is under authors. And maybe I'll change that in the future, maybe not. We can create and delete authors. Under authors, we can create and delete sources. We're not connecting to the URL yet. Let me set that up. Actually, I'll delete 99 bottles of OOP. Let's search for it. Yep, here's the website by Sandy Metz and Katrina Owen. Very cool. It just made me realize that maybe I should connect multiple authors to a source. Maybe I'll do that in the future. 99 bottles of OOP with this URL. And right now we're not displaying that URL anywhere, so let's look into how we could do that. What we could do is source card. So why did I do that? Oh yeah. So under text headline, we're going to add a condition. And we're going to say if source.url. Oh, no, not and if. We want an else in there too. So if there's no source URL, just display the title by itself. But if it is a source URL, we'll do an anchor tag to link to the URL, target equals blank. And then this is interesting. I've done target equals blank for 15, maybe 20 years, probably 20 years. But Ember's template linting caught a problem for me and let me know about it. So there's a security risk with this, where when you open any URL to a new target, it has access to the opener window to its JavaScript. So that's a security risk. So Ember warned me that I should say rel equals no opener, or noopener as I like to say. And so that was really cool that Ember's template lint caught that security issue. And then we link to source title this way. So let's check out on the screen. It reloads. Oh, that don't look right. Source card. Source URL. Did it not save the source URL? It might be because... Oh yeah, so the source URL exists on the server side, but I had not set it up as an attribute here. And Ember is loose about that. It doesn't error out when you try to assign to a property that's not there. So let's add that in and try again. We're going to need to recreate it. 99 bottles of OOP. We'll just paste in that URL. Now when we save it, it shows up and there is a link so we can get back to the source that we want. So this is developing into a real information tracking system. We can get access to all of these systems that we're creating. I'm definitely not going to want to get into creating tying ideas to quotes, because it's not the most sophisticated thing in the world, but it's not a 4-minute thing. Let me double check to make sure there's no last minute things to do. Author detail page, add source, add URL to source, and delete source. Yeah, so we're good. This is great. So we've made a ton of progress here. We can add some real data into our system. We can kind of create and delete in all of our places. I haven't set up editing yet, so we'll need to set that up. And kind of the UX for how you want to do editing is not the most obvious thing in the world, so I will experiment with that on my own time to come in with plans for that. But in the meantime, another thing we're going to want to do next time is when you have a quote under a source, to be able to add, if you have a quote, let me just add a quote, to be able to add an idea to that quote. And that's the final connection we're going to need to do. But because it's a bidirectional thing, it's just a little bit more challenging. So we'll save that for the next time. After that, we're going to get into authentication as well to set this up, so that you need to be log in as a real user to get access to this data. And that's the point that I got to this past week, where I got the app deployed. It's secure. You don't have an account yet, but it's ciwideas.netlify.com. This is where the app is running. It's just loading up here real quick. I do need a loading screen as well. Like, that'll be helpful to add that in, especially when you start to worry. Yeah, so here's the real app really running. There's a log out and there's a log in. You're going to see my email address, but not my password. So there's real security going on there. You see stuff in here about small talk. So yeah, we're going to be able to set up connecting ideas together, set up authentication. We're going to get into validation at some point as well. But think about how fast we were able to go. We were able to just blow through these screens and add and delete records and connect them together in a really rapid way because of how high level Ember is. Gives us these nice simple templates to work with and a very small amount of code. Like thinking about our forms, like we just had, just kind of create a record and we're good to go, clear out a thing. It's pretty much just one line of code for each thing that's happening. And then in the templates, very straightforward as well. And using Ember Paper's high level of abstraction. Iowski or Lowski said, what was the example that you wanted to show when you needed to use reload true on the model? That's a great question. I'm going to make a note of that for next time to make sure that I can find out what it was. It has something to do with making sure we pull all the data down at the same time. I think it was an n+1 query, so I'm going to look into that to make sure I can reproduce that, because that was a helpful thing. And it's something that's non-trivial about Ember data, but it's helpful to know and to take advantage of the power of it. So Iowski or Lowski, thank you for pointing that out to me. I'll have that ready for you for next week, and it'll be great. So I need to run. Thank you so much for joining on the stream for the two of you. Thank you for your help and reminders. That's always very appreciated. We'll see you next Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern as we continue on building full stack app with Ember and Rails. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll catch you next time. See ya.